please use the wave function. You'll then have the ability to unmute yourself to ask your question. We'll get around as many as we can. We're going to start with Paul Gilmore at Sky Sports News.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, Paul.
Frank, Liverpool will obviously lift the trophy after a game that matters so much to Chelsea. As a three-time Premier League champion yourself, how difficult or easy was it to get motivated for games after the league was won?
Well, it does change the face of it. I think Liverpool have had an incredible campaign. Maybe it's normal sometimes when you succeed and get over the line like they have in such great fashion that there can be a small dip, which they've had a little bit in results because they were so virtually unbeatable for a big period. I don't consider that though. I only consider the strong Liverpool that we've seen for the big parts of the season. That's the Liverpool I expect.
On specific players in the squad, what's your position on Callum HudsonOdoi and his quest for game time? How do you think his game is progressing at Chelsea?
Yeah, I've spoken about Callum a lot. He needs to keep training at the highest level, which is actually what I've seen him doing, particularly in the last week or 10 days. In the 2 games he's come on, he's had good impacts in the last 2 performances. And that's the way he needs to continue. He's a young player with great talent, great potential. And, I want to see that potential come through.
Have you had any sense that he's getting frustrated at a lack of game time?
No, but I'd expect all my players to want to play as much as they can. So only as much as I'd expect anyone else. I have a squad here to pick. I pick a lot on how players train and daily and what they can give us and how when they either come on or when they start games, what they give us. So it's the same as every other player.
One player not currently at Chelsea, Kai Havertz, has told Bayer Leverkusen he wants to leave. When would you like to get this deal done by?
I'm not talking about Kai Havertz. I've said before, he's a player of another team. I'm looking at a game tomorrow that is so huge for this club. The last thing I want to do is talk about players of other teams. Generally
speaking, are you finding your reputation as a player is helping you talk players into joining Chelsea?
No, again, it's not a question for my opinion on that. If I work for this club, I want to get the best out of the group that I have. And if we're looking at bringing in players, if there's a time to speak to them, you just want to speak about the vision and what you want for the club. And when I get the opportunity to do that, I'll do that hopefully with a lot of passion and feeling and an idea of what I want. And that's normal part of the course. I remember those being a player and having certain conversations like that at different times with managers or people in football, and it's an important thing. You want to, as a player, you want to join something that is you're going somewhere, and aggressively you want to get to a target, and that's the only way I will speak to players, either that I get the opportunity to speak to or my own players. We all have to feel that the vision and idea of playing for Chelsea is a really positive one, and my job sometimes is to say that.
Okay, we'll go to Alistair McGowan now, BBC 5 Live.
Hi Frank, how you doing?
Hi, good, thank you.
I just wondered, obviously, you brought in Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech this season already. Are you looking to boost your squad from an attacking sense this summer, given that you've already brought in 2 high-profile players?
We will cross that in the summer. The idea of the 2 players we brought in, of course, they're attacking talents, and you bring in players like that to try and improve what you have at your disposal. Now we know there may be players moving on naturally, ending contracts, and we know it's something that I feel, and I've spoken about a lot this year, that in certain games where we've had a lot of possession and of a ball and chances created to a high level, when we maybe haven't quite done that. So I think those 2 signings are hopefully going to add to us in that case. And then after that, what comes in the summer comes after the next few huge games for us.
And just in terms of Liverpool as well, you talked about they've had an incredible season. How much or how far did Chelsea have to go to try and catch a team like Liverpool if you want to be champions or champion contenders, really?
Well, a long way. And we have to be realistic about that as a club, as do many of the other clubs, because themselves and Manchester City, particularly Liverpool in their league form this year, have shown an incredible consistency that only comes through hard work and sometimes some time with fantastic players and fantastic coaching. And we're at a different, point in the curve, and we have to look and respect that and work towards it. But you're talking about probably the two best club teams in world football, up there with, you know, maybe a couple of others in European football, but they're right up there. And that's the difference. And the points don't lie over the last few seasons. So be realistic, but we have to have strong targets and we want to close that gap.
Moose at TalkSport.
Hi Frank, how are you?
It's good, thank you.
I see you're being linked today with Sheffield United goalkeeper Dean Henderson. I know you don't talk about players at other clubs, but if you want to, feel free. But my first question is about Sheffield United and Norwich. Your performances against them were below par, I think you'd admit. Yet the weekend you were absolutely magnificent against United. Is that because you've got a young team and sometimes you're just going to get that, a disappointing performance followed by one that probably leaves you thinking this is exactly what we need from the last two games to qualify for the Champions League?
I wouldn't put it on a young team necessarily, Moose, because I don't think I'm always picking a young team. There might be young elements to it, but I think that's been a part of the story. I wouldn't want to directly relate it to Sheffield United and Norwich. I think it's probably more where we are at, and I've spoken a lot about this year, and particularly recently. Some days after a good result, everything feels rosy. And, you know, we have a team to take on everybody and a team to take on the quality of Manchester United. And after Sheffield United, everything's terrible. My job is to kind of try and stay somewhere in the middle and see a longer picture, a longer game, and work towards that. Inconsistently generally comes when teams are in a process. I think we saw it with the teams now. Liverpool won, banging out win after win after win. A few years ago, they've worked towards that. So we just have to understand where we're at. We'll fight against it for sure. That we have to try and replicate that mentality and quality and work ethic that we produce against Manchester United more. We've shown it in parts, but that will come with work, I strongly believe.
And my final question is almost in two parts. If you win the next two games, you're in the Champions League. Was that the absolute number one goal going into the season? I know you can still win a trophy, but was the number one goal when you arrived a year ago to get in the Champions League? And if you manage it, does that take you a step closer to being challengers for the title next year?
I think it was... We have to say it was the number one goal at the start of the season because it's the competition that's in front of you at the start. It's a competition that you have to have and produce the most consistency, which generally means the top teams come to the top. Competitions can be slightly different. And it's a gauge of where you are as a club, and it's the prestige of wanting to stay in the Champions League. We've done it a lot over the last 10 or 15 years at Chelsea. This year, I think it probably was the most testing time to try and be in there. So if we do, I'll be happy. Does it mean we'll be challenging for the league next year? No, it just means that we've made, I think, a really good step this year if we get there. And then we have to go, okay, how do we bridge that gap, which still remains a lot of points. So it's hopefully we'll be positive. We're not there yet, and there'll be much more work to do after that.
James Burford, PLP.
Frank, now that fifth sort of no longer offers up a Champions League place, have you felt the pressure notch up for these last few games?
Not particularly. I always presumed that it would be top four because I thought that was the best base point to be at. So I remained there, and we're obviously still there, and now we're there as a fact. So we work the same way. We don't look too far ahead, considering we're coming towards the end now. It's very clear what the objective is. So the pressure remains the same. There's pressure on Chelsea to try and get in the Champions League. Now we know it's top four. That just is what it is.
And given that the...
James, we've got to move on. Sorry, it's only one each now. Nazar Kinsella, Goal.com.
Hi, Frank. I wanted to ask sort of two questions. Just a quick one with Pedro.
One, please, Nazar. We've got to keep quick. Thank you.
All right. Okay. With Willian and Pedro, have you had assurances that they can complete the season with their short-term deals? You've got the FA Cup final and Champions League a bit later now in August.
You've Nazar, you've caught me on the hop with that one a little bit. I have a presumption that they will do. I don't want to say something that I get wrong because I'm probably looking at Liverpool and Wolves ahead of anything else. But thanks for reminding me. I'll make sure that we've obviously seen the value of not just Willian on the pitch in this restart. Pedro hasn't played so much, but the value of their experience. So I clearly would hope that they stay with us right to the end. I think that would be the thing that club and player wants.
Okay, last two. One for James Ollie and then one for Nick Puel.
Frank, hello. It's just a question about goalkeepers. The two most expensive goalkeepers in the world presumably will be on the pitch tomorrow if Alisson and Kepa both start. I just wanted to ask you what you value in a modern day goalkeeper and whether you think Kepa can still get to that level to establish himself as your number one in the long term.
I mean, what do I value in a goalkeeper? I think clearly you want them to be able to be as talented to keep balls out of the net. It's old school, but it's obviously their first and foremost job, and what a goalkeeper should keep as closest to their heart. The idea of clean sheets. It's not always culpable solely on them, of course, but for a keeper to have a real desire and a talent to produce that. But in the modern day, they're even more involved in play than ever, and to use their feet, to be a personality, to be an all-round goalkeeper, which you see with top-level goalkeepers in the world. And we're fortunate at Chelsea that we've had ones that we can certainly say were part of huge eras for the club. That has to be Kepa's desire, to be that person for this club and to be a goalkeeper that in his own right he can say he's a huge part of a successful team. So it's not just on Kepa, that of course, but in his own way, that's what he has to believe and work towards.
Okay, last question in this section. Nick Purewall.
Hi Frank, can I just check on team news for the weekend? Will N'Golo be okay? And sorry, not the weekend, but tomorrow. But and then also, will you give Liverpool a guard of honour, and will you watch the trophy presentation?
N'Golo is not fit. He's not ready for this game. I'm very happy to give a guard of honour for a team that deserve it, having won the league in such style as well. With the trophy, I completely respect their trophy lift. I don't know. That would depend on circumstance after the game. But we go there with huge respect. It's, we're competitive here, but you have to understand the team's won the league well, and we'll handle that in the right way, but focus on the game. Okay, that's the end of the broadcast section. Thanks for that. We're going to move on to the dailies, and we're going to